Live people ignore the strange and unusual. I myself am strange and unusual.
Hey guys, what's up? My name is Anna, and I am a lover of all things creepy, horror, scary, paranormal, weird, you name it, I love it. I'm super passionate about film, but especially horror film. So I really wanted to bring that passion of mine to my YouTube channel, start making creepier videos on horror films, on ghost stuff, spiritual stuff, really just kind of experimenting with new types of videos on my channels. I was really inspired by CJades and Possessed by Horror, their format of reviewing movies, and how they kind of just talk about their personal opinions. Especially Courtney CJ, she made a video about the horror movies she recently watched, so she decided to rank them. It definitely inspired me to rank the top horror movies that I have watched in quarantine. So if you're a horror lover like me, stick around. Just want to put a disclaimer that these are my opinions. I think horror movies and what makes them great is very subjective and different amongst all horror lovers. I know every different horror lover likes different kinds of horror movies, so it's very personal to the viewer. So just keep that in mind when reviewing these movies. I'm totally fine with starting a discussion in the comments below about what you thought, if you disagree with some of the points I've made, but just keep in mind these are my opinions. So today I'm going to be talking about 4 movies that I watched in quarantine, because I didn't want this video to run on too long. I'm going to be talking about them in order to my least favorite to my most favorite. Also, when I am talking about these next 4 movies, I'm going to be giving them as much of a spoiler-free review as possible for me, but when writing my notes for these, there are some things I'm going to hint at or talk about that if you haven't seen the movie, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. I'm going to call them minor spoilers. That's what I'm going to call them. I'm not going to spoil anything huge or major of the movie and like ruin it for anyone that hasn't seen them, but I am going to be referencing some things because they're just things I really want to talk about in the movie, but I hope that makes sense. I don't know how to there's just some certain details that I want to talk about, but I made sure not to add anything or talk about it vaguely, if that makes sense. Minor spoilers ahead, just keep that in mind. All of these movies are pretty dang good, so there's that. But at the same time, it's like I didn't want to watch any bad horror movies during quarantine. Like, the world is already in enough. I'm watching a movie to escape. I need to like watch movies that I know are gonna be like somewhat good. So that's just how this turned out, but I'm gonna stop blabbling on and get into the review. Okay, so with number 4, we are gonna start off with the movie The Lodge. I will also give you guys my rating of each movie after I'm done talking about them. Okay, so The Lodge is a psychological horror film that came out in 2019, starring Riley Keough and Jaden Martell from It. So it was really cool to see Jaden Martell in another horror movie. Just to give you guys a little bit of context, It Chapter 1 and 2 have made my top 20 favorite horror movies of all time. I've absolutely loved the remake. So like I said, The Lodge is a psychological thriller about a stepmom and her 2 soon-to-be stepchildren who get snowed in together in a lodge, and things start to get really dark and really crazy really quickly. The Lodge is a very much atmospheric, slow burn, psychological horror. It has that horror religious tone theme in there as well. Isolated cabin tones, very much a winter style horror movie. So if you like those kind of vibes in a horror movie, then this might be right up your alley. So for this movie, I knew absolutely nothing about it going in. I was literally just hanging out with my mom one night. We were looking for a scary movie to watch. We read a quick synopsis of it and we're like, okay, this sounds somewhat interesting, let's watch it. So I think that's good that I had 0 expectations and I did not see the trailer, so I didn't know how, intense it was gonna be. There was also really no hype about this movie. I'd never heard anyone talk about it. I will say I definitely, from the beginning of this movie, thought this movie was gonna be a paranormal type horror movie, especially when you learn that Riley's character, Grace, is the only survivor of a mass cult. It's a very extremist Christian cult, and so that's where the religious undertones come in, and she's facing a lot of PTSD. She starts experiencing really creepy stuff, she doesn't like the crosses on the walls of the cabin or this picture of Mary, hides those things, but then the next day they'll be back on the wall, so you definitely think there's like a supernatural force at hand. But let me tell you, this movie throws a big twist at you, and it is not what you're thinking at all. Which I guess I have to give the movie some praise for that, for throwing me that twist and definitely making me think it was going to be something that it wasn't. I always like a nice surprise, and a nice twist in horror movies, definitely something I look for. But that being said, the twist wasn't that like mind-blowing or didn't like strike me as super creative or super smart or like super well done. I think this movie should definitely have some sort of trigger warning because it has a lot of themes of There is a scene in there that was extremely disturbing for me, and like it just comes at you with no warning, very similar to Ari Aster's, Hereditary and Midsommar. If you've seen those movies, you're just watching a scene and then bam, it hits you with something extremely disturbing, extremely shocking, and you're like, wow, I wish I was prepared for that. That was a lot to just witness. This movie has one of those moments. It's effective, but I'm not the biggest fan of it. So again, it was very brutal. It comes at you out of nowhere. Very Ari Aster style. I don't know, maybe with the undertones of should have a trigger warning, especially with that one scene. Overall, my review of this is that it was nothing special, or it just didn't stand out to me. It overall was a fairly average concept. I don't think it did anything extremely unique. I feel like a lot of that stuff has been done in movies before. It was a simple concept which can definitely work in horror, but it just didn't have enough development or depth in my personal opinion. I didn't really think there was a lot of development between Grace, the main character, and the dad's relationship, so like you don't really even feel for her that much because of the lack of development. I do want to give some major praise to the actress that played the daughter, the little girl in the movie. Her acting was incredible. She had to act some very emotional, taxing, and difficult scenes, and she pulled them off brilliantly. That they made me viscerally uncomfortable and sad, and like it was actually hard to watch because she did it so well and it was so realistic. So major props to that young actress. I don't know her name, I'm going to put it on the screen because she deserves it. Major props there. The main thing that can ruin a horror movie really quick is the ending, and I really did not like the ending of this movie. I thought it was so stupid. I thought it was such a cop-out. I heard a lot of people say, oh, it was brutal ending, but like it was a good ending because like what else could they do? I don't know, it seemed very lazy to me. I didn't get any closure. I didn't feel complete after watching it. I guess I'm a little bit of a sucker for like a bit of a happy ending in a horror movie, and I know people are going to disagree with me on that. That being said, I don't think every horror movie has to have a happy ending, but I don't know, it's kind of like the horror movie brings you all this terrifying emotions and maybe sad emotions, so I like it to come to like an end and like a close and like kind of wrap with like some conclusion, and this movie just really lacked that for me. It was just a very dark ending, and it just leaves you feeling really bleak. The whole tone of the movie, if I could describe it, is bleak. I also just wanted to add one more thing about it. They tried to add this whole doll element in the movie with the doll houses and these dolls. Very much like if you've seen Hereditary, except for in Hereditary it is thought out and it symbolizes and foreshadows what's going to happen in the story. And it was like they just directly tried to copy that, but it never really came up or made sense in this movie. I didn't see the point of it. So that's it for The Lodge. I know that seems like a really negative review, but it's actually not that bad of a movie. It's very entertaining. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Not terrible, but not amazing enough to get above that 6 for me. So The Lodge. Let me know your thoughts if you've seen it in the comments below. Anyway, let's keep going. The next movie on our list is Invisible Man. Invisible Man came out in 2020, starring Elizabeth Moss, who is an amazing actress. I love her work in everything I've ever seen her in. She is so good at horror and thriller type movies. She can just literally act out the hardest scenarios and just makes you feel it. She's so good. So Invisible Man is a movie that is inspired by a 19th century novel and the 1933 film of the same name. I knew about neither one of them previously, nor had I seen them or even heard of them. But even though this film is an adaptation of the older film and book, it has major modern twists into the storyline to make it, more fitting for 2020. So it's about a woman who escapes a very toxic and abusive relationship, but as she, is still living with this fear of her ex, she finds out that he has passed away and actually committed. Just when she thinks she can live her life free of fear from him, she starts to be tormented by an invisible force, and she believes that her ex has found a way to fake his own death and torment her, but nobody believes her. So as the film goes on, you're right there with the main character, watching nobody believe her, so it really has that psychological thriller element, because, at some point you're like, okay, is she like for real, or what's really going on here? But then watching nobody believe her, you're like so frustrated for her, and you just want for people able to believe her. Like, you just so badly are fighting for her. So first, let's talk about the terrible trailer for this film. I saw the trailer briefly. It was just completely left zero impression by the trailer, except for that looks really cheesy and like it's been done before. It looked basic, there was really nothing appealing about the trailer, and it just looked like a bad thriller movie that was coming out. And I know I'm not the only person that thought that. A lot of people thought the same thing just from seeing the trailer. But thank God I started to hear really positive reviews from people that had actually seen the movie, and that really made me want to see it. So thank God word spread to me, or else I probably would not have watched it. There's so much more to the movie than the trailer shows. The movie definitely surpassed my expectations and proved to be so much more than just a generic cliche sci-fi thriller. So this movie has some of my must-haves for a good horror movie. I wouldn't even really consider this movie a horror movie, I'd consider it more a thriller, but for the sake of this video, we're just gonna lump the terms together. It has some of my must-haves. So one, I love when a horror movie can just completely shock me, give me a twist or a scene that just leaves my mouth hanging open, where I'm just like, what just happened? I did not see that coming. This movie didn't have like an amazing crazy twist, but it did have a scene that literally I loved because it just left me so shook, and I love when a horror movie can do that for me. Again, there was one scene in this movie, and if you've seen this movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Number two, I love when a horror movie can have hidden Easter eggs in the background and little subtleties in like the background of a scene to look out for that just chill you to your bones. I love that stuff. Kind of similar to like Paranormal Activity vibes when you're just looking all around the screen for something to happen. Love that. This movie is also an example of what I believe are jump scares done correctly. They're not just like jump scares that are cheaply thrown in there to get, you know, a cheap scare from you. I think they're actually creative and well thought out. One of my favorite jump scares in this movie is not really a spoiler because it's like in all the trailers and all the promo, but it's whenever she throws the paint down the stairs from the attic and he's right there and the paint just like outlines him. I think that is just so, it's so simple, but it's so brilliant. I wish they hadn't had spoiled that for me because I was expecting it. So I wish it wasn't in the trailers because I think that is just such, I think that's so smart. I love that. And the people I was watching the movie with didn't know that was happening, and it actually made them jump, so watching that was really fun. So one critique I have personally for the movie, again, this is just a personal thing because I've not heard anyone else say this, but I wish there would have been a more dramatic fight scene at the end. I wanted the end to really come to this big climax for her to really get her justice and just like, oh, like it felt like it was too easy. I wanted to see her fight for it a little bit and for it to like really be worth it. I know she's going through torment the whole movie, but still, like, I don't know, I just wanted it to come to this big climax moment. You know, to each their own. That was just something that I personally noticed and I felt a little dissatisfied with, but again, not a big deal. I just want to point out that my favorite sequence is the whole hospital sequence, just that whole scene of where they're, the whole timeline of them being in the, I guess, mental hospital. I just loved that sequence. So good. And really quick, I wanted to talk about some of the technical things they did in the movie. I loved when they would just pan on, you know, an empty corner or an empty hallway and you don't know what it's there for because every shot in the film is done purposefully, right? So whenever it's just panning to no one's there, you're like, okay, is he there? It really makes, I love that. I thought it was so cool. It really created that suspense for me. This movie also utilizes silence a lot, which I thought made it very, very realistic, and again, just added to the intensity and the suspense. And obviously everyone's going to mention when talking about this movie that it is an allegory for domestic abuse, which if a thriller horror movie has an underlying deeper meaning, that to me makes it 10 times better. I love when a horror movie has depth to it. There's so many just basic surface level horror movies out there that are just trying to scare you, and so when there's actually a deeper thought to it, it just makes it 10 times more special to me. So I am going to give Invisible Man an 8 out of 10. The next movie I'm going to be talking about is Dr. Sleep. I know I am behind the bandwagon on the next two movies I'm going to be talking about. They did come out in 2019, but I still watched them, you know, late compared to the rest of the world. And I just have to talk about this movie because I'm very surprised about how much I liked it. Again, this is the exact same thing with Invisible Man, where the trailer just had zero appeal to me. And I know so many other people who said the exact same thing about this trailer. It just looked, again, cheesy, and I went into it with zero expectations, which I think really, really helped me out. So if if you don't know what Dr. Sleep is, it is the sequel to The Shining. Stephen King obviously wrote the novel for The Shining and then the sequel, Dr. Sleep. So this movie is kind of made to be a sequel from the Kubrick 1980 version of The Shining. The story follows Danny Torrance, all grown up, and he meets a little girl who has the same abilities of The Shining, and there's just so much more to the storyline that I don't even know how to talk about without spoiling it, because I think they purposefully don't give away a bunch of that in the trailer, because it just makes the movie a lot more interesting and captivating when you're watching it. What I love about this movie is that it pays homage to the first Shining movie, but at the same time the movie very much has its own feel, its own tone. It feels like its own movie. Obviously the directors have their own stylizing choices, so I think that's why, you know, the films feel so different. But at the same time, us diehard fans of The Shining still get our fan favorite moments, and I feel like it's the perfect balance of the two. It really brought in all the nostalgic Shining moments at the end of the movie when it comes to its climax. So I heard a lot of people say that this movie felt very slow when watching it, and it is a longer movie, but in my personal opinion, I was completely captivated the whole time. I don't think it is as slow as The Shining, and here's the thing, The Shining is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It's my favorite classic horror movie of all time. So like, even though I call The Shining slow, that it is slow, but that's really creepy. I don't think it is as slow as The Shining. I don't think it's as like, I think The Shining, I think that like adds to its tone because it's like that isolating like day after day feeling, and that's like, it's purposeful. This movie doesn't have that. I think it's very entertaining from start to finish, in my personal opinion. I absolutely loved how they added those long overview scenic shots just like in The Shining. I think they did that to pay homage to The Shining, you know, to add a similar tone. Again, similar tone, but like not the same at all. It's very hard to explain. But yeah, I love those beautiful like overview shots. I don't know the technical term for them, where it's like that creepy, subtle music. Gave me The Shining feels. Love it. This movie was just also visually stunning. The astral projection scenes were absolutely beautiful. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. The other thing about this movie is that this movie literally made me cry at the end. This movie was emotional and touching to me. The underlying, you know, story about life and death and your loved ones. It was really, really touching to me, and I love when a horror movie can make me feel more than just the emotion of being scared. When a horror movie can make me laugh, cry, terrified, I mean, to me that is art. Like, to me that is a well done horror movie. To me that makes it a success in my book, and this movie made me feel all the feels. So I do have one kind of negative thing to say about this movie, and that is there is a scene in this movie that if and when I rewatch it, I will have to get up and leave the room for, because this one scene was so hard for me to watch the first time. I feel like this particular scene dragged on way too long. It was way too brutal and just, again, hard to watch. It was very upsetting for me to watch, and it really stuck with me in a bad way. But saying all that, I have to say that I understand why they put it in the movie and why it was necessary to the storyline. Me and my boyfriend, you know, both while watching it, were like, God, why did they put this in here? This is terrible. This is just not necessary. They don't need to drag it on this long. Like, afterwards, you know, me and my boyfriend were talking about it because he doesn't like thrillers or horror movies, and I do, and so it takes a lot for me to convince him to watch a movie with me. So because of this scene, I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know I was gonna have that. And he was the one that actually was like, yeah, but I know why they put it in there, and it's for you to grow that hatred towards the antagonist of the movie so much. And I was like, oh shoot, you're right. Like, it made me hate them so much, to where at the end of the movie, when they're finally getting what they deserve, you're like cheering and like rooting. Like, we were literally like laughing when they were finally getting, you know, what they deserve at the end of the movie. We're like laughing, like, that's what you get. Like, it really, that's exactly what it does. That's what it's there for. It's to build that hatred, and so I have to respect it in a way. But at the same time, if I rewatch the movie, I can't watch that scene. It was too much. Besides that scene, I think it was an absolutely amazing movie. I loved the overall message. I loved the ending. Loved the magical and theatrical aspects in this movie. I'm a very theatrical person, so when a horror movie has like any elements like that, I'm going to love it. I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. Okay guys, we're at number 1. Are you ready? Because I have a lot to say. Us! I cannot believe I waited so long to watch this freaking movie. It came out in 2019, I believe. Yes, and it is the second horror film by Jordan Peele, who did Get Out, which was received very well for the most part in the horror community. It was his first, I believe his first directing experience and his first horror film. And so yeah, while Get Out was a really good movie and I really enjoyed it, it didn't have like a crazy lasting impression on me, just personally. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. Like I said, horror movies are subjective. There's certain things in horror movies that like stand out to me. I thought it was good, I thought it was super entertaining, I thought it was smart, I thought it was well done, but like, again, just didn't have a crazy lasting impression on me. So because of that, there was a lot of hype whenever he announced that he was putting out a second horror movie called Us, and I was, you know, down to watch it, but again, wasn't super excited. Just thought it would be good. So same thing, I went into this movie with very little expectation, didn't know anything about the storyline, so I watched the trailer like right before I rented it because I just needed some context. I had no idea what the storyline was, and I don't know why, I like to know a little bit going into a movie. The trailer looked good, so I was like, okay, yeah, like this looks actually really interesting. I'm interested in this plotline. Let's go. Let's see what this is about. So Us is about a family of 4. They go on vacation at their beach house and they begin to be tormented by these lookalikes. And that's pretty much all you get from the trailer. And let me tell you what, there is so much more to this movie. So if you've seen Get Out, you know that Jordan Peele puts a lot of social commentary into his movies. And again, they always have a deeper meaning, which I personally, like I mentioned before, love. I think it makes a horror movie so much better. I loved the Easter eggs in this movie, the symbolism, how things come back full circle, everything is done purposefully, everything makes sense. I mean, that is art. But I will say on the other side to that is that the social commentary isn't shoved in your face when watching this movie and the politics of it, okay? You can watch it as just a horror movie. You can enjoy it for what it is and nothing's forced on you. I think it works both ways and you can interpret it however you want. Also, I think it's less literal than Get Out. Get Out's social commentary is a little more blatant and like straightforward, where this one I think is very much up to interpretation with some things, which I personally absolutely love. I think the movie does a great balance of answering questions to where like the movie just doesn't make any sense, but also leaves things open for interpretation. Like there's a point at the movie where it explains to you what's been going on, but I think that's necessary, or else the movie would just be like, well, this is just trying too hard to be deep. Like what was the director thinking when they did this? I like that to be explained a little bit, but it also didn't explain everything, which a lot of people I've seen are mad about because they're like, oh, there's so many plot holes, but I'm like, couldn't you just leave those things up for interpretation and like figure out what you think about it or what you think the director did? Because people get mad if something is spoon-fed to them, but then they get mad if they don't understand something and they say it's plot holes and doesn't make any sense. There's a lot in this movie to decipher, you know, why did they do this? Why did they put that in it? That's not, you know, it just blatantly explained away, and I think that's really fun. A lot of these plot holes that I've seen people complain about this movie, they didn't bother me when watching it, so that, and maybe that's just a personal thing. There's a plot hole that is pretty, like once I saw people like talking about it online, I was like, okay, yeah, no, now that I think about it, like that's never answered. But at the same time, while watching the movie, I didn't even think twice about it. It was kind of like my suspension of disbelief. I'm believing that there's a reason for it. Does that make sense? Okay, I have to mention the freaking music when talking about this movie. The music is so well placed, so well done, so creative, so unique, so freaking scary, so creepy. I think it makes it a work of art. It gives the movie like a classic feel, like this movie could be a classic. The dance scene / fight scene at the end, are you kidding me? Art. That's all I can say about things that are just good. It's just art. That's art. That is the stuff I like to see in horror films. Gosh, there's a moment I want to talk about, but I also don't want to spoil anything, but I'm going to like vaguely say it. And if you haven't seen the movie, you won't know what I'm talking about, but I won't like say it outright. But basically, there's a scene with a homeless man, and it comes around first full circle at the end, and I did not click for me the first time, and when it did click, I was mind blown. Because again, it just goes back to everything Jordan Peele puts in his movie is purposeful, and I love that. This movie has everything in it that I've missed about horror and everything that I've been waiting for in a good horror movie. It's unique. I've never seen anything like it. Let's talk about the big twist in this movie. There's a major twist, which I didn't catch. I wasn't anticipating. Looking back, it's very obvious, and once you know the twist and you rewatch it, you're like, oh, I get it. But yeah, I didn't catch it, and so I think that's a well done twist. I absolutely loved this movie. I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. I guess I would give it a 10 out of 10. I don't know, I feel like a movie has to like be perfect for me to give it a 10 out of 10, so I don't know, like it was pretty damn near perfect. So that's why I'm gonna give it a 9.5 out of 10 for me. And yeah, I'm so glad I finally watched that movie. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope this brings more horror fans to my channel, and I hope I can make more videos like this for you guys, because I had a lot of fun doing it, and this is something I'm super passionate about, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments below, as long as they're nice and respectful to everyone's opinions. I promise I will be respectful to yours, even if it's complete opposite of mine. So again, thank you guys for watching. If you want more videos like this, or if you have specific videos you would like me to review or talk about, then let me know. And I will see you guys for next week's video. Love you very much. Mwah.